What is this thing unraveling in the background as I keep drawing? At a very simple level, it is one of the prompts from Smogist. But the prompt itself wasn't much of a prompt. It was unfathomable. Something beyond the ability for humans to concern themselves with, to understand. And I decided to go in a Lovecraftian, eldritch kind of way. Cosmic horror is a really interesting thing for me to explore. But every time that I work on something like this, there's a little voice in the back of my head, probably my mother, maybe an art teacher from when I was younger, wondering, with some mild level of concern, why are you drawing such scary things? This is concerning when you are young. Not to everyone, but to some of us, we have this idea that, oh my goodness, should I not be drawing the creepy things with blood and fangs and claws? It seems to elicit some strange reactions from the people around me who are older, presumably wiser. Maybe I should stop. Maybe I should move away from it. And a lot of people do. A lot of people stop drawing the scary things. They focus on other things. Many of us walk away from the creepy, the scary, the macabre, and I think that that's a pity. Because most of the time when a young child is drawing and they're making scary things, they're not doing that to glorify those things. They're not going to end up in a worse place in life. It's not a precursor of child delinquency. It's a human expression. In fact, if you go back to some of the earliest stories that we told ourselves, some of the myths or even religious texts, there are horrifying, terrible, scary things in many of those myths. Stories about what we should and shouldn't do as humans, our role in the world, humanity's place in the cosmos. And if there is something fundamental in being human, about exploring things beyond our imagination, things that are too big for us to handle, it doesn't seem unreasonable that we as artists would explore those things as well. In fact, as children, we spend so much of our lives, our early lives at least, trying to process our place in things, understanding that you have desires, but that the world is not going to bend to those desires, which is a hard transition. You know, when you're 1, 2, or 3 years old, pretty much everything is taken care of for you. And yet, as you hit 4, 5, and 6 and start to really develop your personality, start developing your own desires and wants and ideas, all of a sudden, the world starts to constrict around you. No, you can't do that. You can't do anything you want with your time. You need to go to school. You need to wait in line. You can't get the teacher's attention at any drop of the hat. And that's a difficult transition. So, if it's normal for little kids to try to figure out where they stand in the world, in the universe, how much more normal is it for us as adults to do so as well? So, drawing things like this, telling stories about cosmic horror, playing video games like the Dark Souls series or Elden Ring, all of those are exploring our place in an extremely large, incomprehensibly complicated world. And that is unfathomable. So, drawing scary things, drawing the macabre, drawing things that are explorations, perhaps of some of the darker things we process as humans, I don't see as innately dark. I don't see it as being a bad thing. Sometimes we have to explore that. And art can be a really constructive way for us to pull those things out of our psyche and process them. Sometimes those things are ugly. I've talked a lot on this channel about drawing ugly things, but there's a little bit of a difference in the ways that that could come across. One is being okay with your own drawings turning out ugly, a way that you didn't want them to turn out. You know, we might call a drawing of a sphere ugly if it's not actually spherical, if the shading is poorly rendered. But there's also things like what I'm drawing right now, which I would classify as ugly. It's not ugly because it didn't fit my intention or my expectations. It's literally just an ugly thing. It is, from some objective scale, not a beautiful thing. Now, Could we extrapolate that, justify it, warp the definition, and try to say that this is beautiful because it achieves something different? It achieves its purpose. Yes, of course, but I don't think that's quite the point. Drawing ugly or grotesque, or even verging on evil things, is often a way for us as humans and as artists to explore things that maybe we don't want to be, things that are outside of us, things that we don't understand. So much of my art in high school was exploring the things that were maybe a little bit dark, things that were not, commonly discussed. And exploring those in my artwork allowed me a methodology of extracting them from myself. I could see them on the page. I could see the lyrics to the songs that I wrote. Sometimes I would go, that's a little dark, dude. Like, you should step back from that. But I think that getting them out of me, out of my mind, out of my heart, and then seeing them or listening to them allowed me to have further context and understanding for what those things were. But there is a case to be made for ugly things having some beauty in them. I think that the cosmic horror genre is good for us as humans because it takes us from center stage and puts us into a much riskier and scarier position. Part of what makes Bloodborne and all of the eldritch horrors of Lovecraft's world more intriguing for us to process, and I would say productive for us to process, is it asks questions about how do we deal with the unfathomable nature of the cosmos, with the potentiality that we are tiny, we are these little dots across the universe, and we matter so little. I think contemplating that is really good for the human psyche. We have a tendency to think ourselves quite important, and to think that we are the rulers of our domain, and in a sense, that is true. But that kind of idea is what has led us to driving certain animals to extinction, to destroying particular environments, and even over the course of human history through war to push our dominion onto others. So I think that looking in the opposite direction can sometimes be a benefit for us as human beings, to process the reality, potential maybe, or maybe actual, that we are so small, that we are but specks of stardust floating through the cosmos. And the scary, Lovecraftian, grotesque, unfathomable art can sometimes be our way of exploring those things. And sometimes it's just fun. I like drawing things like this. I've talked about it before. Part of it is the fact that I can make any decision I want and it fits. It doesn't have to be symmetrical. If I mess something up, we don't know if that was a mistake or not. You can't look at this and tell me that I forgot to draw a spike on the left wing. Maybe this is the way it was intended. This kind of art is lower stress, but it's also a break from a lot of precision type work that I do. I do a lot of drawing where I try to make things very precise. Even editing these videos is a precision craft. I'm trying to make sure that the audio works the way it's supposed to, that the music levels work the way it's supposed to. So sometimes, for me, taking a break and drawing something like this is just so relaxing because it's so different than all the other things that I do. But it's fun. These things are intriguing. I can envision myself running a character from one of my books into a creature like this and what would they do? How would they react? I can think in my brain how this form must undulate and move and how it must be writhing, all of these tentacles. I'm not an animator. At some point I might give it a try, but it's easy for me to think in my mind's eye about what this would look like if it was in a video game, what it would look like if it was in a cartoon of some kind. And that's enthralling. That's really exciting to process. These ugly things, the scary drawings, can give us a sensation that is just fundamentally different than we get with any of our other manners of artwork. And I think it has to be said as well that if you are sitting down and drawing creepy, scary things, that doesn't say anything about who you are as a person. You can draw creepy, scary things and be a really lovely human being. In fact, for some people, drawing these kinds of things is probably allowing them to be a good person because they're getting this out. They're getting the ugly, the scary out onto a page. They're metabolizing it in some way, dealing with it in a healthy manner. And maybe it's all just okay to begin with. But because I started off with that notion that sometimes our mothers, our teachers, our people in our lives can look at this work and go, "Are you okay? Are you doing all right?" Because there's a lot of darkness in your artwork. And sometimes, in fact, most of the time, I think it's probably worth asking those questions. Because if there are people in your life that are expressing the darkness because they have some struggle with mental illness or just a difficult time, it is good to ask those questions. It's good to check on the people that are important to you. When I'm drawing things like this, I couldn't be happier. This is my way of just having a fun time with my drawings and my projects. So be careful with those assumptions, as I suppose we should be with most of our assumptions. Well, as always, thanks for listening. I would love to hear about your thoughts on this matter. Do you draw creepy things that other people might find as creepy? And what have been some of the funny reactions you've gotten from folk in the past? If you're looking to join an artistic community, feel free to check out the Discord link below. Thank you to patron Who, What, Where, When for your support. And if you would like to check out my Patreon, there's a link to that below as well. Have a good one, y'all. See you soon.